Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a nice day. It's a little bit chilly here, but I'm working outside anyways because it's pretty nice. I want to point out, so maybe you see here, this artist, maybe you'll be able to read that even in the dark, Jennifer Orkin Lewis. On Instagram, she's at August Wren. We're going to work today. The art that we're going to make is going to be kind of in her style. She's an illustrator, an author, an artist. But yeah, just want you to kind of check her out. I'll show you kind of the style that we're going to be creating today. These are some pieces that I have that are kind of in the works. So just some kind of wildflowers. Something that's a little bit fun and kind of light, easy. This should be a, those of you that are going to create this with me, this should be a no stress situation. So this is another one that's in the works, not finished yet, just kind of laying down some layers. So today we're going to start, we probably will not finish the piece that we start today, but we're going to go ahead and create kind of the beginnings of these pieces, the beginnings of some paintings of some wildflowers. So I've got, this is a piece of 140 pound, excuse me, cold press paper. And you'll notice I have not masked it. I will tell you that one thing I have done is, and this is kind of makes your life easier when you're painting watercolors in this situation. I just kind of put some tape along the back here so that as I'm painting, my piece is going to kind of stay where I need it to be and it won't move on me. So lighter paper, because we're not going to saturate this paper. We don't need to use the heavier, more expensive paper. I've cut this piece of paper to 6 inches by 8 inches. I generally like to work in sizes that will easily go into a frame. So yeah, and like I said, I think I mentioned I'm going to be using this kind of medium-sized brush. I'll do all the painting with this medium brush. This is not the one I've been using. Those of you that have been with me for a couple days, this is, I would call this a number 8. This is a round, but it can get to a nice kind of a fine point there. So. And my palette. So I've got my regular old plate that I've been using. You can see I've got all different colors here. Today I'm going to be using oranges, yellows, reds, some of this purple, and white, which I don't often use in watercolors, but I've got a little blob of white there that I'm probably going to mix in, create some pinks. So let's get started. Generally when I'm doing work like this, I start with what I would call maybe my lightest colors. And I'm going to create just kind of some big flower spaces. Flower spaces. That's probably not a technical term, but that's what I'm going to refer to them as. I'm mixing up just a little bit of orange here. And let's see if you can see that. Just a little bit of orange. I'm going to add a tiny touch of red to that orange. So I'm going to make that orange maybe kind of a peach color. And I'm going to create just a couple of flower shapes. What's important as you're doing these pieces is that you don't stress about, like, does that look like a flower shape? Is my flower shape flowery, shapy enough? Just kind of make these shapes. You see I'm throwing in some red on top of that orange, and I'm coming back with more orange. This is a wet on dry technique, which I believe is what Jennifer Orkin Lewis does. But you can see I've just kind of blended some colors, and I made maybe kind of a tulip shape there. So yeah, very simple. Now I'm going to create another color. Turn my palette a little bit so you can see that. I'm going to work with a red now. I would say mainly red. So I want kind of a vibrant red. And I'm going to create another flower shape. And this one's going to be kind of different. Let's say I'm going to kind of put it over here. And I'm just going to make some petal shapes. Again, I'm doing this kind of quickly. That's how I would encourage you to do it. Don't overthink what it is that you would be making now. So there's a nice flower shape. I'm going to come now back to my palette. I'm going to get some slightly darker colors. So I've got this kind of a purple here. I'm just going to touch on that. While this flower is still wet, I'm just going to touch some of that color into these petals. So you can see I'm just kind of bringing it in there. And again, just kind of creating some different shapes here. I'm gonna come down over into this little corner here, and I'm actually gonna use my white now. So in the center, I'll bring my plate over so you can see it. So I've got my white blob here. It's already got some pink that's on it, or some red that I had brought over to it. So I'm just gonna use that because it's there. I feel like that's pretty good. So I like this kind of pink color, and I'm just gonna lay down where I said here, kind of a large round shape. And again, I'm doing this quickly. I don't want to overthink it, but you can see I'm just kind of rounding these edges and just kind of being a little bit random with it there. So I like this pink shape I've got. I'm gonna add just a little bit of orange into it, just kind of the same way that I've done some of these others. So I'm just gonna add a little orange over here. And gonna clean my brush because I hadn't before that. Now I'm gonna come and get a little bit of this red and just kind of bring that. And notice how I'm doing it, where I'm being kind of loose, and I'm making what, you know, might be petal shapes, but I'm just kind of adding a little more flare of color to this little flower shape that I've made there. Yep. So these flowers are drying fairly quickly. I should be able to work on them again in just a few minutes, but I'm going to create another flower shape. This one I would say would be like I would call it like a cluster of flowers. So I'm going to work kind of up in this area here, and I'm going to imagine that I have kind of a spade shape up here, or like a large fanned out leaf. And inside that spade shape, I'm going to kind of mix up a little yellow. I want kind of an intense yellow. Inside that spade shape, I'm just going to make some little blobs. So I've got a little blob there, blob there. So I'm just kind of filling it out. At the top, those little blobs should be smaller, and I'm just going to continue kind of to fill in these spaces. But as they get down lower, I'm going to make these blobs just a little bit bigger. So you can see I'm kind of, it's almost like a triangle shape. As they get down here lower, I'm just going to make them even bigger. So you can see I'm kind of coming down to that shape that I'm looking for there. Just kind of creating what will be like a little cluster of flowers there. To that, just because I've got it, these little blobs of color are kind of wet, I'm just going to touch some orange into each one of those, kind of at the bottom, what I would call the bottom of each one, and let the paint just kind of fill into that space in the way, however it chooses to move. So just kind of touching a little bit of orange in there, and yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. I'm going to do similar, so another kind of cluster of flowers over here. This one's going to be just a little bit different. In my mind, so I'm just kind of guessed, just from looking at the artist's work. Again, just a little reminder, you should check her out, Jennifer Orkin Lewis. Let's see, let's put that at August Wren. When I feel like she probably is studying a little bouquet of flowers that she's got. So that's where I think she's going, but I think you also can get to a point, and that's what I'm doing here, is where you can just kind of play. Once you have an idea of what some of these flower shapes look like, you can just kind of play with it. So I'm going to create another little cluster of flowers over here. This one I'm not going to make as wide as that shape. I'm going to use a red that I've mixed up, and I'm just going to create again just kind of some blobs. And you can see, so I'm imagining that these blobs are kind of on either side of what's going to be kind of a long green stem there. And same thing as before, as they move down, they should get kind of bigger. You might have some smaller ones kind of tucked in next to some of those bigger ones, but I'm just going to bring that all the way kind of across. And the other thing that's important to notice is I've not placed them directly across from each other. I've kind of varied where they are, because you want that. If they're right across from each other, that might feel unnatural to us. So now, as an artist, I'm looking at my whole piece here, and I'm really just kind of thinking about my composition and does this have balance. And I feel pretty good about like the top half. I feel like I need to have something kind of down in this space here. So I'm gonna create just a couple more flower shapes down in this space. And I'm thinking about the colors that I have here available, and I'm gonna toss out some, I think some slightly darker colors. So I'm gonna go for kind of a more purple, mixing up a slightly darker purple here, and yeah, so I'm just gonna fill in a couple more, maybe what we might call like a violet shape. And I think I'm gonna do another one of those, very similar. I'm gonna come back with a darker color on that in just a moment, but I'm keeping the top edge of these kind of rough. There's some of those violets that you know that have that shape. And now on that, I'm gonna come with a slightly darker color. So I'm just gonna mix a little bit of a kind of a dark blue into that purple that I made there. And I'm just gonna kind of touch that in. I don't want it to cover the entire thing. I just want it to kind of be, kind of hint that it's there. And this one got a little bit lighter, so I'm going to come back and get a little bit of that darker and just kind of touch the bottom edge. So yeah, all right. Again, right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking at my whole composition, kind of studying what I've got here. I know that in this bottom section here, I'm going to bring, in a moment, I'm going to bring some green stems. Notice, you may have noticed we haven't touched any green yet. So I showed you guys this piece earlier. And this is a piece where I'm almost finished. I'm not quite finished with it, but the green is kind of the last step, kind of fill in those stems after the fact. I'll show you one of those today in just a moment, but yeah, so I'm not ready to do any of the green stem work just yet, but I will get to that. What I am going to do is I'm going to bring some orange flowers in here just because I feel like I want that color, and I want to, again, just try to think of some balance in here. So when I do these guys, I'm going to keep these smaller, and I'm going to make these stems very simple, or not these stems, but the petals is what I meant to say. So just some real simple, I think I'm going to do 3 of these guys. Trying not to overthink my shapes, or, like, oh, that guy just overlapped that guy, that's okay. Just kind of fill in this space with some flower shapes. And I am going to, just because I've kind of varied the colors on each one of these, I'm going to add just another touch of color to that orange. I think I'm going to bring in just a kind of a red. So I'm not getting too much water. I'm mostly touching my paint. I'm just going to kind of hit the center of each of these. There's already a lot of water on that flower, but the way this is going to dry, I think, will be interesting visually. So those of you that may have joined me yesterday, I was doing that Milky Way piece. Just wanted to let you know that I have a video now of the other portion, so the sky portion. I have a video on YouTube. My link for the YouTube video is in my profile, so if you want to go check that out. And the other thing that I'm going to start doing, I've actually started today, this is my first test here, is I've made a video of this live class that I'm also going to post on YouTube. So if you miss it and you're not able to see it on my story, it'll be on YouTube. But going to leave this piece now. It needs to let all of these little flower sections kind of dry more thoroughly before I come back with some of my green stem work. And I think I'll probably save that and show you how to do that tomorrow. So thanks a lot for joining me today. I hope you're well. Hope you're able to get outside into some sunshine, have a walk maybe, and I hope you have a good afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow.